ask anybody in my family, ask any of my friends, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be at this level.
Yeah.
It was not something that I expected, and it just kind of, it was step by step. From the get-go in swimming, I was I knew I had some talent, but I was never at the level that you might say, oh, he's going to go to the Olympics.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Rush Out Perspective, a Mastering the Art of Living podcast. Today, we take a deep dive, no pun intended, into the extraordinary journey of swimming sensation Gabriel Castaño, who defied the odds. From a Mexican dreamer to an Olympic contender, we will learn about Gabriel's relentless spirit that earned him a spot as the sole Mexican swimmer with an A-cut qualification for the Tokyo Summer Olympics, and his achievements of being named an NCAA All-American and a member of the Big Ten team in 2020. But we're not just going to talk about his personal achievements. We're going to learn about what it takes to have a heart of a champion and what impacts he wants to make on this community and those around him now and in the future. Gabriel,
thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
For sure, man. It's great to have you on the podcast. And I was doing a lot of research on you and started. It opens up a Pandora's box of how you want to approach a kind of a conversation about this. You want to talk about having a championship mindset, how to go into, cultural, the cultural aspect. Many sports, professional sports are you see a lot of great athletes in boxing, in swimming, and if different sports with a Mexican background, and the pride about being a Mexican athlete is definitely one of the things that we're going to talk about today. And what you're striving for in the future, and taking what you've learned as a professional athlete and representing a country on a large scale, and what you want to do in the future. Okay,
let's do it.
Let's do it. I was looking at your journey, and one of the things that stood out is that your journey from a young swimmer to a Olympic athlete is pretty amazing. Take us back to the early days, and what initially sparked your interest in swimming in the first place?
Yeah, so for me, actually, I wasn't a swimmer my whole life. I actually started in high school, which is considerably late for somebody that's into swimming.
Yeah.
Most of my friends that are high level, they started when they were very young. I did start young to just to learn to swim. My mom put me in lessons to obviously for safety reasons and all that, but it wasn't anything I took very seriously. I was into cycling, I was into triathlons, so it did come in handy once or twice when I was little, but not until I got to high school is when I when I really went for it, and it started to grow on me, because swimming isn't really considered a fun sport, if you will, but it is definitely something that I became obsessed with, and you have to be when you want to get to a certain level, and that's kind of what drove me to that point. But growing up, yeah, it's definitely a big adjustment for me to move from cycling onto swimming.
Yeah, was there somebody that you were emulating when you were taking swimming classes? Was there somebody that really sparked your interest, said, hey man, this is a sport for you? Was there somebody that really pushed you that direction?
Not really. I mean, I definitely had, I looked up to some people, Nathan Adrian being one of them. He was an Olympic gold medalist in 2008, 2012, 2016 as well, in all those Olympics. And he was the great American sprinter of the time. I definitely looked up to him. But before that, I mean, I really didn't know many swimmers besides, obviously Michael Phelps, everyone knows him.
Yeah.
But other than that, I started to, it was something that I took interest in, and over time, learning from those guys and watching those videos and learning those techniques was something that I was really obsessed with, and I was trying to emulate as much as possible.
Yeah, honestly, Michael Phelps. It's ironic that we're interviewing today, because Michael Phelps is probably the top two athletes that I respect and admire the most. Just how he dominated the sport of swimming, so yeah. It's great to have you for sure. Off the camera, you and I talked a little bit about some of the challenges you faced, that you faced on your path to becoming a swimmer for the 2020 Olympics. In particularly, we were talking about how, when you were chasing your Olympic dreams during the height of pandemic, how that What are some of the obstacles that you had to go through with that?
Yeah, well, beginning in 2020, well, before that, actually, I'll start before that because, I had a knee injury in 2019 that started to get worse and worse over time. I was going into my junior year at Penn State, and I remember competing at Pan Ams, which actually the next Pan Ams is in about a month and a half. So already 4 years ago, it's crazy. But at the time, I competed at Pan Ams, representing Mexico, and I had my knee was about twice the size that it should have been just from fluids and all that stuff. So it wasn't good, to say the least, and it was definitely a big uphill battle coming back from that into my junior year at Penn State, trying to rehab, trying to stay healthy, trying to stay on top of those things, because for me it's something that I've always been a little bit iffy on, is like the recovery aspect of things, the stretching, all that. I'm not very flexible, so trying to stay on top of that was definitely a big obstacle at first. But fast forward to the pandemic, is when I kind of took a step back and I was like, I'm gonna let this heal fully. I'm gonna try to not do a whole lot, let it recover on its own, and do some rehab here and there, and try to stay healthy. But coming back from that, obviously all the pools were closed. There was nothing that I could do. Since it was a swimming injury, I did it while swimming. I'd never really felt it walking or running or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it only flared up when I swam, and over those months that I wasn't swimming, I was like, okay, well, I feel better. I don't think this is a problem anymore. But sure enough, I got back in the water and immediately started feeling the same pain. So I said, there's about 12 months to go to the Tokyo Olympics. It's time to do a surgery or, try to look at some alternatives. I had some long conversations with the doctor, with my trainers, with my coaches, and we decided that surgery was the best alternative, or the best, path to recovery. And so I went forward with it. This was July. The end of July in 2020.
Okay.
And it took me a good amount of time to get back into it because of the COVID protocols and because of all that. Personally, I think it was all a bit too much. I think it was a little overdone, and I don't want to get into it too much, but for me, honestly, it was definitely a hard time going through all that rehab, going through with school, with swimming, with everything, trying to balance all that.
Yeah.
With crutches and everything else. It was definitely not ideal. That being said, though, I definitely made the most out of it. And during that time, my roommates and myself actually, periodically would get like contact traced or whatever. So the Penn State protocols were very, very strict on that.
Yeah.
I missed about a month of rehab overall.
Yeah.
In that time that, it should have been a 6-month recovery. It was probably closer to 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
And it was definitely something that I was very upset about, with the short amount of time I had until the Olympics. So for me, it was trying to balance all of those, trying to balance school, trying to balance, the recovery process, and coming back from that. It was the end of my senior year at Penn State, and for me, it was definitely a lot tougher to get back into it and get back in shape, because actually at the end of January, when I was starting to get back into things, I actually got COVID myself. So asymptomatic, by the way, which is not great. So I had no symptoms. I had to be locked down for 14 days.
Wow.
And then Penn State protocol, wouldn't allow me back until I did some heart, monitoring and stuff. So it was another week on top of that. And then right after that, I had the Big Ten meet of my senior year. So, no preparation. I was out for like 3.5 weeks. Really not ideal. And with all that, that's a very small portion of that journey with COVID. But after that, I started to, we qualified for NCAA, so it was another month or so of prepping for that. And after that, it was like, okay, now it's time. If I don't go now, if I don't start working my ass off right now and stay consistent and stay away from this COVID stuff, I can, maybe be in shape in time for, to qualify for the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I traveled to Europe for 3 weeks trying to qualify. I did 2 meets there. I came back and I did one in California, and that was where I qualified. It was the very last meet that I could have qualified in. And at the time there was a lot of push for for certain, there was a lot of treatments that people were asking me to get and stuff, and I was very adamant on the fact that I didn't want to be a part of that. And for me, honestly, not to get too into it, but I was very, personally, I believe that it's everybody's choice, and I didn't go forward with it. But it was it was definitely very controversial, and I had to go through a lot of hoops to be able to do what I wanted to, and to be stay healthy and do what I wanted to. So. For me, COVID was a roller coaster, but luckily that's done, or so they say. But I mean, for next year, I'm very excited because I don't have those things in mind. I don't have that injury.
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited to get back into racing. I'm already training, so it's only a matter of time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I could see that one of my personal friends, Dustin Stanton, I talked to you about that, how he had all these scouts coming to him after he rehabilitated, and then COVID hit, and then all the scouts, all his meetings with different scouts around the league disappeared, and ended up retiring. But yeah, I could see how that was a huge impact. And then you're in a catch-22. You either do this or you don't do that, and you do that, or you don't do this and you don't do that kind of situation, which is a horrible position to be in, especially when it has something to do with your health. Your decisions to what's best for you, your own personal health. Touch on it a little bit. Penn State has been a hot, been in the national news for various reasons. With different, boys, men's swimming, female swimming. What's your take on that a little bit? You want to touch a little bit on that?
As far as like the team culture, or
like the like men competing with girls,
Oh,
and
yeah. I could definitely get into that. That was actually Penn. So
okay,
it's different than Penn State.
Okay.
But no, that's still very relevant. I can go on a long time about that, but I think it's BS. I think it should be nowhere near the level that it is, and it shouldn't have been allowed in the first place.
Yeah.
I'm very outspoken about it. I'm not afraid to, and I don't think anybody should be afraid to speak their mind about it. It's ridiculous. If I were to do that, I would break every women's record on the books. It's very simple, and I don't believe in that in the slightest. I believe that there is no room for that, and there shouldn't be any room for that. And finally, they're starting to pass laws that prevent that from happening. And I think women are more afraid to speak than they should be. There's a few, like Riley Gaines, for example. She's great. She's been very outspoken about it. And she's one of the only prominent voices that I know that are willing to stand up to that side of things, and deal with all the backlash, because even though there shouldn't be any, there for some reason is. And I think that women's sports should be protected, of course. If my daughter or my sister, whatever, I don't have a daughter, but I'm just saying, like, in the future, if I had a daughter and everything, that would be something that I'd be very, very passionate about, very outspoken. There's no reason for a man to be competing with women in any way, and as much as people would like to say, that's not a woman, that's a man. So
I appreciate that. I apologize for making the
no worries
school misrepresentations. I did a lot of research when I was getting my master's on Title IX. And to hear it just flipped on his face is pretty astonishing. And I hate to change, so we're gonna get it back on you. What do you think sets apart the mindset of a successful athlete from the rest, and how do you maintain the mental resilience in high pressure situations?
It's a good question. Before COVID, I would give you a different answer, just because I think it has to do with confidence and the training that you've done. Because before COVID, my mentality through high school and through my early years of college was, I'm invincible. It's obviously not. That's something that I'm obviously very realistic.
Yeah.
But having that mindset puts you above other people, just in the sense that you don't hold yourself back in any way. You see yourself as you're racing against the best in the world, and you can say, well, I'm going to do my best, and I know that I can compete with them and put up a fight. That at least gives you a chance. I know a lot of people that are just like, oh, that's this person that I'm racing against is X, time, whatever, this and that. And I think that already mentally holds you back.
Yeah.
And I think the mind is extremely powerful, and relying on it and believing everything that you know, if you start visualizing things, negative things, they'll become true and all that. So I think that's something that I've been working on lately because of my whole injury and everything. That was something that my confidence took a hit, obviously, because I was out for so many months, not training consistently and all that going on, and I was very worried about the fact that I'm racing against guys that are obviously very consistent. They're very strong. They're very they've been in the sport for longer. They've been in high pressure situations more than I have, and for me it was something that I definitely am still working on, and I believe repetition as well is very, very important, because especially for sprinters, you know, my race is 22 seconds in an Olympic pool, and any little mistake is going to cost you the race. So I believe just repetition, having that the stroke down, the underwaters down, the start, every component of it has to be right in order to you know, succeed in those high pressure situations.
Wow, 22 seconds?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. How far do you swim? How many?
It's 50 meters.
50 meters.
Yeah.
Wow.
So one length of the pool is 50 meters.
Jeez, that's fast, man. I got to see you do that one day.
Yeah.
Okay, and okay, as I touched on a little bit, it's about we've seen Mexican athletes compete in various sports, right? And Olympics, particularly, Mexican people stand out in Olympics a lot, in boxing and other sports, soccer. And what is the significance of representing your country in swimming, and how does it align with your personal goals?
Well, for me, it was a little interesting because since I got into it so late, I was born and raised in Mexico. I lived there for 12 years, and then I moved to the U.S., and I've lived in the U.S. ever since. So for me, it was I was a little disconnected from sports in Mexico for a while before I joined the national team. But for me, it was interesting because this was my freshman year of college was when I finally decided to start, you know, competing in Mexico and trying it out, because before then I was good, but I wasn't near the level that I wanted to be because for whatever reason. And so I showed up to a national meet. I remember this, and everybody just spoke to me in English. Everybody thought I was American, and at the time I actually wasn't. So I was still, my Spanish is my first language. People normally don't assume that, but I feel very connected to my culture in Mexico, and I know that there's a lot of people that are, you know, they're big fans of swimming, but the representation isn't necessarily there. You know, with swimming at a high level, it's very difficult to be at the Olympic level and all that. And unfortunately, Mexico is a country that, you know, has those resources but doesn't allocate them properly to those athletes that want to represent them at a high level. Fortunately enough, I was able to, you know, make it work with Penn State through my parents. Were very I'm very lucky to have my parents, you know, support me and all that. But, you know, the resources in Mexico that are they're misused. I feel like they could be putting into athletes and making such a, you know, much more than what they have with sports. You mentioned boxing. Diving is another one. I know a lot of the divers on the Mexican team. I roomed with some of them at the Olympics, and they're some of the best in the world. You know, they get medals, you know, pretty frequently at the world level, and it's impressive to see it. And I think that there's just so much more to be had in Mexico if those resources were properly allocated. But, you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda. I think that there's hopefully some change coming soon. But to me, it's very, very important and very, it means a lot to be able to represent Mexico at a high level when it's, you know, the crowd that does represent Mexico at a high level is very limited. So that's definitely something that made me very proud.
You know, I'm a big martial arts guy, mixed martial arts guy. My wife is a 4th degree black belt, and you know, the UFC does a lot of things. They've actually built an institute, a PI, a Performance Institute in Mexico, and they're investing in the professional athletes. I think there were 3 champions last year, UFC champions, from Mexico. So you know, and my grandfather's from Mexico. He lived in Mexico, so my family, my lineage is from there. So okay, next question is In Mexico, sports can be a source of national pride. That's what we've been talking about, right? How do you feel about being a role model for young Mexican swimmers who dream of Olympic success?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one, and it's interesting because it goes back to what I was mentioning about the resources. Because a lot of people, they have those dreams, they have the work ethic, they want to put in the work, but they don't have there's only so much you can do when you don't have the proper infrastructure. You don't have a pool to swim in that's nice and well kept and has nice starting blocks. All that stuff is out of your control, and it's kind of sad to see that in a lot of parts of the country where, like I said, I get DMs on Instagram that are like, I want to get to the level that you are. I want to put in the work. I'm willing to put in the work, but I get this one a lot too. Is the physical aspect of it too. I'm 6'4". This is not really normal. I wasn't supposed to be this tall.
Yeah.
My dad's like 5'10", 5'9". My mom's like 5'6".
Oh, wow.
So it kind of happened out of nowhere. I'm obviously very blessed, but it was not something that I was, supposed to, I guess be this tall. But I get it a lot. People are like, I'm being held back by this and that, and it's tough. It's tough to see that because, number one, I don't believe in limiting yourself and making excuses, if you will.
Yeah.
I know that there's, you're dealt a deck of cards, and sometimes it's what you got to do. I have friends that are not nearly as tall as I am, and they're still very, very fast people, athletes, very good, well-rounded athletes. And you got to make the most out of what you have, unfortunately. But I think, going back to that, I think that it's very disappointing to see the lack of attention in sports in Mexico, and that it goes for every sport really.
Yeah.
But swimming being a pretty expensive sport, you got to build a pool, and it's hard to maintain, and it's a lot of money, a lot of resources. People aren't willing to put that in, and for the future of the sport, it's concerning. But there's a lot of people that are working hard to make that right now. So, yeah.
Is there a difference between, this is a random question, is there a difference between swimming in an ocean and I mean, I know there's the whole all the what do you call it, variables in place, right? But is it hard? It's much harder to swim in the ocean, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
and you can't swim the same way. You can't try. You can't.
No, I mean, I've done open water swims before, in lakes, in oceans.
Yeah.
I actually did the Cancun cruce de Cancun, which is it was about, I want to say 3 kilometers or something like that. It wasn't very long, but even then I was feeling the waves, the salt water, the lack of water, and it's totally different. Yeah, but that's not really my thing.
Yeah, because you were a triathlete too, right? You did triathlete.
Yeah.
So you had to do some.
Yeah, actually, that was mostly where I did the lake swims, and actually when I was like 7 or 8, actually, was my first open water swim in
really?
South Padre Island, actually.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, could you share with us a story about a mentor or coach who played a significant role in your journey and helped you connect with your Mexican heritage with your competitive drive?
Yeah. For me, personally, it wasn't. I didn't have a coach that was Mexican.
Yeah.
I've trained in the U.S. my whole life, and but at Penn State, Matt Hurst, my coach. I still talk to him every now and then. He was the big difference maker for me. He helped push me to the next level that I didn't know I was capable of. Through the time that I was in high school, I knew that I was capable of a lot. I knew that I was good, but I remember there's my sister showed me this newspaper article that was written about me in high school. And I said I would love to represent Mexico in the 2020 Olympics.
Wow.
And that was so far-fetched at the time. I did not even consider, that actually becoming true.
Yeah.
But for me, it was definitely about unlocking that mental, that attitude that you can do it and getting to that next level. But at the same time, baby steps.
Yeah.
I can't just jump from that high school level where I was a state champion to an Olympic level in 2 years. I mean, it was definitely a work in progress, and my coach was definitely something that or somebody that I very much appreciate being a part of my life and being a part of my career in those early college days and later in the college days into the Olympics. But yeah, as far as the Mexican heritage, I haven't had the honor to work with a Mexican coach as much.
Yeah.
I know Nicolas Torres. He's from Chihuahua. He does really great work with a lot of his swimmers. Trained a lot of really high level swimmers as well. So maybe in the future I'd be able to work with him.
Yeah. Speaking of, when you were talking about, I was just thinking about, like, you gotta have to, when you say that you would love to represent Mexico in the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of faith involved in when you say something like that and having to take the small steps. How does your faith play a significant role in that? Like, continuing to show up.
That's a good question. I definitely take that very seriously because for me, I know what I'm capable of, but I know that I wouldn't be able to get to this level without my faith, and I think that for me, especially through the pandemic, it was very important to stay true to that and to stay grounded in that. And ever since, I've grown a lot in it. I've tried to do my best to stay with it, and obviously grow in it because. In sports, there's a lot of setbacks with injuries, with whatever it may be. You have a bad day, you have a bad training week. Those are horrible. And then when you don't have that maybe those friends or the family that are always there for you, or maybe you don't want to speak out or talk about it, whatever it may be. There's always the faith aspect to it, and I firmly believe that there's a higher power that helps me. Achieve all this, and has given me the physical aspects, the mental aspects, and everything else. And I'm obviously very grateful and blessed to be, at this level. So
that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like, especially for athletes, I think you're always going to have some setbacks, and you're going to have to lean on somebody on
something,
on spiritual power that's going to transcend your own mindset, someone else's, subconscious, whatever, like people sometimes subconsciously restrict you from achieving your goals.
Exactly.
Too, so you kind of have to escape the human element, and go to a higher place. So I respect you for that, man. The Olympics are not all about sports, but also about diplomacy and unity. How do you view your role in fostering international camaraderie through your swimming career?
Yeah, that's something that I definitely was very aware of before the Olympics. But when I got there, I remember it was the opening ceremony where I was just like, I was able to take it all in. Everybody from all over the world. Doesn't matter what race, what religion, what anything. Everybody was united at one place, one time, and the whole world was watching the opening ceremony. Unfortunately, nobody was allowed to be there in the giant stadium. That was a bit of a disappointment. But anyway, I think it was definitely something that it hit me. It hit me hard. I was like, what a privilege it is to be there in that stage with all those people, all those superstars. I think I saw. I'm not really big into basketball, but I saw Kevin Durant, I saw Djokovic, really high-level athletes that were in Tokyo, and I was able to really appreciate, what God has given me and this opportunity. And I have friends from all over the world too, from the swimming world. It's a big, the swimming community is big, but it's also small in the way that everybody kind of knows each other. Everybody. At least knows of each other. So it's definitely I love that about swimming. I have friends from every corner of the earth. So yeah.
Dude, that's so beautiful, man. To have you to know that know somebody that has experienced it at such a have an omnipotent experience for your life, and that continues to, that's part of your, like, now it becomes part of your responsibility, right? Like, you carry that mantle and say, I still hold that torch for Mexico, right? Or the United States too, right? Speaking of, you're kind of in and out, you're practicing, you're working on your craft, right? Also in the community, what are you looking? What does that look like for you? And what role do you want to play as a professional athlete who has a voice, who can make a difference? Speak to me about that and how important it is and what your vision and dreams are for that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked speaking. Speaking out about whatever it may be. I would love the ability to speak publicly, maybe some motivational talks about swimming and my trajectory, because ask anybody in my family, ask any of my friends, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be at this level.
Yeah.
It was not something that I expected, and it just kind of, it was step by step. From the get-go in swimming, I was I knew I had some talent, but I was never at the level that you might say, oh, he's going to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And be, top 30 in the world at one point.
Yeah.
It was definitely a lot of work put in, obviously, but for kids that maybe don't have that it factor yet, that I can make sure to tell them that it's all about the work.
Yeah.
You can have that talent, but it'll only get you so far.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm very passionate about and speaking to people about, especially the young kids, that look up to me, and that I want to put obviously a good image for them and represent them well and everything. So for me, it's definitely very important, and I would love to be more involved with the swimming community here in Texas. And I'm already starting to get involved a little bit with it, but that's something that I'll definitely grow in a little bit more.
Awesome. If people want to get a hold of you to invite you to a speaking engagement or to do some public relations work, where can they get a hold of you at?
Yeah, I think my Instagram would probably be the best way to do it,
Okay.
Or my email.
Okay.
I guess we can link it somewhere on
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that'd be something that I'd be very happy to entertain a conversation. So yeah.
Very cool. Gabe, it's a pleasure to sit down and talk to you and learn about your story and just get to experience what, just be in that moment as I ask you questions and listen to what you say and have you feel the experience with you. So I appreciate you sharing that with me today. And guys, that's it for the Rush Out Perspective. As I always say, have peace and light, and you remember that the ocean refuses no river.